Do you get super frustrated when you export a track, listen to it on your iPhone, and realize you can't hear any of the bass? That's because there's nothing to hear at that frequency. So how do you fix that? Today, we're going to. Low frequencies aren't necessarily something that you can hear very well unless you're wearing headphones or you have a subwoofer actually producing those frequencies. The human ear can only listen to probably 20 hertz and up. So that sub bass frequency between 20 and 60 has a really hard time being heard, rather we can feel it. Feels bassy, how we know bass to be. The problem is when you have bass lines that just have those frequencies and nothing else, you can't hear that if your sound setup isn't set up for it. For instance, an iPhone doesn't have a subwoofer. It's just a tiny speaker that projects all of the mids and all the highs. So how do you create a track that has all of the frequencies audible on an iPhone? What you're looking to do is twofold. One, you either add harmonics to the bass, or you have a bass layer that doesn't have any low end to it, but still follows and emulates the same bass line. So we're talking about in kind of basic sub basses, I'm referring to sine waves. Sine waves are very pure. They don't have any distortion or weird harmonics to it. It's a very casually sloping line, and that's your input signal. When that's translated into bass, you get this sound. Not very audible. You can see here that the key of D hovers around 36 hertz. You won't be able to hear that at all amongst other sounds on your iPhone. Even if I boost the frequencies on the higher bands, you don't hear any change really whatsoever until you start boosting this. But once again, on an iPhone, you'll barely be able to hear that. So how does one introduce harmonics into a basic sine wave sub bass? The answer is distortion. Between the use of saturators, between the use of distortion, overdrive, and other various plugins that are additive, you can add new harmonics to your sine wave frequency to actually have it be audible. And I'm not being phonist here, I just have an iPhone, so when I think of phone, I think of it as iPhone. So here we have our sine wave doing this again. But if we turn on our distortion in Serum, you can see there's little tiny peaks here. And now we can hear something that's way more interesting than just the sub bass. And if I boost them, you can hear this range on an iPhone, even if it's quiet. But if I low cut everything past or before that range rather, you can still hear that. It's not very loud, but it is in fact there. And obviously, when you have a distortion plugin or you have the distortion effect in Serum, you can automate or play with the drive to your needs. So if I slam the drive and the mix is at 100%, we get something that sounds like this. Now, that might be too aggressive, but you want a more well-rounded sub bass, then that's when you would actually incorporate a filter, and you can add one at the end of a chain. And I'll do MG low 24. And that is definitely audible on an iPhone. Before, we have this, and after we have, and then if you want to increase it ever so slightly, you can increase, or you can change the cutoff of the filter and keep going. Now that is a nice sub bass. Additionally, if you don't want to play with your simple sine sub bass and you want it to be as pure as possible, that's when you would have an additional layer on top. That's when you would start to layer all of your basses together. You would EQ your layers, you would keep your sine bass just the same, and you would have everything well balanced in between mixing, mastering, and compression and everything else. That was my quick tip for today. In general, distortion, saturation, you name it, plugins in general will add harmonics and color to your sub basses so that they will be audible to the ear without having to need a subwoofer or a car. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, don't forget to like it and comment and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.